In the last stream, we were working on setting up this very rudimentary Tom's simple storage setup with the inventory connector and our crafting terminal here, which just by being placed down next to our inventories now gives us access to all of the items in all of these chests from within the crafting terminal. We can search for any item, we can take out any items that we like, and we can even put our items back into here and it will automatically place them into one of these chests. Pretty cool stuff. We also, right at the end of the last episode, started placing down these warp pipes, and so now if we press shift while standing over those warp pipes, it will take us to some of the other warp pipes dotted around the base, and hopefully going forward that's going to make it just that little bit easier for us to teleport back and forth between our center room and all of the other rooms around. And what I want to work on in today's stream is I would like to work on some automation. Specifically, I'd like to work on automating the production of the gravelly mulch. Right now, we have to take the mulch manually. We have to go back via our warp pipe, ideally, to our terminal. We have to grab some gravel, craft that gravel with the mulch, then head back over to this area over here, place the gravelly mulch in here and in here, and then that will slowly but surely begin processing all of that gravelly mulch into iron, copper, nickel, tin, lapis, flint, stone, and coal. I want to automate that process. I also want to automate the taking of all of the resources out of here. I want to take things like lapis, flint, and coal and just send those around to our storage system. All of the other stuff, the iron, the copper, the nickel, and the tin, I want to take all of that and automatically process it from its ore piece form into its final ingot form. For that, we have to take it, we have to craft it, we have to place it, we have to break it, and then we have to smelt it. Thankfully, I think using the Opolis utilities mod, which is the mod that adds these blocks right here, and also I think the block that adds the catalog as well, made by Ben, the creator of the pack, I think using this mod, we can fully automate that chain, because over here on the right-hand side of the quest book, we do have a quest for a block placer, which will allow us to place down the iron gravelly ore, or any gravelly ore. We then have a block breaker, which you can place a shovel into. That will allow us to break the gravelly ore. And we also have a crafter, which of course will allow us to craft the gravelly ore in the first place. And so real quick over here, we do have a quest for a copper pickaxe. I'm fairly certain that we should just be able to shift click that recipe in, assuming we have some sticks. Speaking of sticks, between streams, I did go ahead and move our furnaces, our blast furnace and our smoker away from this setup, just so that going forward, whenever we put something like sticks into the system, they don't end up going into the fuel slot of one of those furnaces, which is what was happening right at the end of the last episode. So now these are not connected to our network, which I think is going to be an upgrade for us. And so real quick, let's craft up some more sticks. Let's throw those into our system here. Let's craft up that copper pickaxe. That is going to unlock the quests for the placer, the breaker, and the crafter. And if we go to @opolis utilities, we should be able to find those right here. So the block breaker is fairly straightforward. It is going to require a second copper pickaxe, but other than that, it's just a dispenser, which is just cobblestone, along with some regular stone, which of course we are generating passively over here. And so if we quickly take a stack of that, we can then come back and craft up our block breaker. Nice. From there, the block placer, very similar, just some stone and some copper, easy enough. And finally, the crafter here, a little bit more tricky, but not very expensive. It's going to be 2 wooden hoppers, 3 crafting tables, and some copper nuggets. So let's go ahead and see if we can't make that happen. We do have quite a bit of driftwood over in our strainer, should we need more of it in today's stream. Real quick, before I craft that, let me quickly see if I can't craft up some more crafting tables as well. We need, ideally, 1, 2, 3 of those. Boom, and 2 of these. Boom, boom, and boom. There's our crafter. Fantastic. And then there is a quest here for the opolis wrench. I don't think we strictly need the opolis wrench, but, you know, just to complete the quest here, and assuming we have any tin ingots, which we do, we can go ahead and do something like that to grab the wrench. And my thought process here now is that we should be able to take all of the pieces out of here, place those into the crafter. The really good news about these items is that they do not require any kind of power whatsoever. And so if I put the crafter down, I can just put in the iron pieces. The other good news about the crafter here is that when you turn it on, it will not use the base crafting recipe. And so I've put 4 iron pieces in here. It's not going to do anything until I put in a second piece of iron into each slot. 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason for that is that it allows it to know what recipe to use every time. Of course, if it took all 4 of these and crafted it into an iron gravel ore, going forward, it wouldn't know how to craft the recipe, and now it knows how to craft the recipe. And so I'm fairly certain that if we start inserting items into here, it should insert them in a round-robin fashion so that the crafter fills up each slot one at a time. It doesn't just do something like this, because that would be horrible. And so let me test that real quick. If we go back and we grab any kind of hopper, a wooden hopper, will do for the time being, although actually, I think we are going to need an iron hopper today, and so I am going to splurge on an iron hopper, and you'll see why a little later on in the episode. But if I do this and I do this, you'll see that it does evenly distribute those iron ore pieces around the crafter, and that automatically produces the iron gravel ore. From there, we're going to send that iron gravel ore round to the block placer, and that will do something like this as soon as you turn it on. Perfect. And then the block breaker is going to go down like this. Both of these blocks, by the way, they do face towards you, so you want to put them down facing you, and that's the direction they will face. And so this is now facing the iron gravelly ore. You can turn this on, but it won't do anything until you put a tool in there. For example, if I put in the stone shovel, boom, it's going to go ahead and break those blocks. We just then need to place a hopper underneath where the center block is, and that's going to collect all of those raw iron or raw copper or raw tin or raw nickel pieces. So that's the basic premise of how we're going to do this. The good news is now that we have access to Tom's simple storage, automating all of that should be fairly straightforward and fairly easily doable with things like the basic inventory hopper that we looked at in the last episode. We should be able to use that to pull all of this stuff into our simple storage system. And then we can also use that same inventory hopper as an exporter to export all of the different ore pieces like the iron, copper, nickel, and tin to their own respective crafters. We are going to want to have one crafter per piece because, as you can see, we can only fit one recipe in each crafter, but that should be fine. These are not particularly difficult to make. In fact, if we come back over here, we should be able to fairly easily make a few more crafters. I guess 3 more specifically is what we're going to need. On top of that, the hoppers as well, the basic inventory hoppers, are also not too difficult. We do need more regular wooden hoppers. How much inventory cable do we have left? We've got 7. We should be able to make more of that very easily as well. In fact, let me go and quickly grab really as much of the driftwood as we have out of here. And for now, we'll just go ahead and dump that once again back into our system somewhere so we're not struggling to craft later on. We'll drop those over here. And then from there, we'll see if we can't make a few more wooden hoppers. That is, of course, going to require some more chests. And we do have a bunch of wood. It's over in our botany pot chest. And so we'll go grab that in just a second. For now, though, we can do something like this. And the idea here is kind of twofold. To show this off, what we'll do real quick is we'll throw down a chest, let's say right about here. And then if you place the inventory hopper against the pipe, meaning that this kind of big bulky end is next to the chest, this is set up as an importer. So now if I put stuff in here, it's going to start importing everything from this chest and sending it around into our other chests. Now, if we do this the other way around, if we have the big end on the pipe side, so we do it like this is now set to export. By default, it's not going to export anything. However, if we were to go ahead and right-click something onto the hopper itself, like this iron ore piece, that is now filtered to iron ore pieces, and it's going to start exporting those iron ore pieces from our system over into the chest. So basically, depending on which way around you put this, it's either an exporter, if it's set with the little end pointing at the inventory, or an importer, if it's set with the big end facing the inventory. Pretty cool stuff. And so if we can craft 4 of these along with 4 crafters, we should be able to then set it up in such a way that all of the ore pieces in our network are just exported automatically to their own respective crafters. And then from there, we just need to take the resultant item out of those crafters and send it round to the block placer. And so real quick, let me see if I can't get all of those crafters and all of those hoppers made. And not too long later, we now have 3 crafters and 4 basic inventory hoppers, of course, not including this crafter over here. And so what I think I'm probably going to do, I'm probably going to set up this automation over on this side of the base, which does mean we're going to have to run a lot of inventory cable, but I think that's going to be fine. And so let me think about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'm going to put my crafters kind of up here, and I do kind of want them facing forward. And so even though it's going to be a little bit more work, I will do something like this, just so we can go 1, 2, 3. And of course, right now it's going to be an uneven number of crafters. It's going to look a little bit awkward because we've only got 4. But I assume that in the not so distant future, we're going to start unlocking more resources, and we're going to need more crafters if we want to add to the automation. So for now, it's going to be a little bit unsymmetrical, but I think that is fine. And then, of course, from here, we want to do something like this. Make sure that we get down 4 of these inventory pipes, like so. And then we want to make sure that these are put down in the correct fashion, which is to export to the crafters. And to do that, we want to do it like this. You want to shift right click onto the front of these crafters, not onto the pipe. And then from there, all we have to do is connect that pipe up, of course, around to our network. Now, one thing we can do if we go to @Toms is we can craft these framed inventory cables. They're a little bit more expensive, but the benefit to these here is that we can use them to kind of hide the inventory cables. And so how many of these can I make? The answer is 6. That should be fine because I'm fairly certain we should actually be able to make a ton more if we go and grab all of our wood here. Let me do something like this. We'll grab a stack of sticks and then we'll make even more of these inventory cables. The thought process is that we can embed these in the ground. And so if we do something like this, we can run these across the ground like so. And if we hover over them, it says can be painted. The way this works is we get the paint kit, and then with the paint kit, you can shift right click on a block. We're going to use the light blue colored stone bricks, and then you can right click on the framed inventory cable, and it will just hide that cable. It will make this block look like the light blue colored stone bricks. The only problem is that the painting kit is a little bit expensive. It's not super expensive, but it's going to be a little bit of a pain for us to make. The buckets shouldn't be too difficult. The wool also shouldn't be too difficult. The stick, of course, is super easy, but we do need to get red dye, green dye, blue dye, and black dye, none of which are particularly difficult in and of themselves, but getting all of them together is going to take us a little bit of time. And so I will look to do that a little bit later on in the playthrough, but for now I'm just going to put these down, and for now it's going to look a little bit awkward, but it should allow us to connect all of these up fairly easily and begin exporting stuff to those crafters. I think what we're going to do from there is we're of course going to go ahead and ideally using our pipes here. There is a bit of a cooldown there sometimes, by the way, when using the pipes. But if we take all of these, what we should be able to do is, of course, place down our block placer and block breaker. So I think we're going to have hoppers under all of these to send all of the fully crafted blocks down into the block placer. Let's put that down right about there, and then we'll put the block breaker down, let's say right about here, like that. And from there, we're going to use the iron hopper underneath that to pick up the ore pieces. The reason I want the iron hopper here and not a wooden hopper is just the speed at which the wooden hopper goes. The wooden hopper is far too slow, especially if we have multiple blocks being placed and broke at the same time. Because there's only one slot in the wooden hopper, and because it's so slow, we could end up in a situation where items spew out or items don't get picked up in time if we don't have a hopper with sufficient space inside of it. And so we'll just do something like this for the time being. And then currently our fastest way of smelting our finished ore pieces is using the blast furnace. If we, for example, look at raw iron, in a regular furnace, it takes, I believe, 10 seconds to smelt, and in a blast furnace, it's twice as fast, taking just 5 seconds to smelt. And so if we were to go ahead and place down our blast furnace right about here, what we should see is all of the pieces get sent around to the block placer. Not that guy, this guy. Get placed down, like so. Over here, we're going to put a better shovel into here because the durability does get used up, and we'll turn that on. That's going to break the pieces and send them down to the blast furnace. From there, all we really need to do is we need to get, I think, 2 more of these basic inventory hoppers. The reason we need 2 more of these is that we need one of them to export fuel around to the blast furnace, and then we need one of them to import the actual iron, copper, tin, whatever, from the blast furnace once it's done. So what we're going to do is grab our cable here. I think we're going to have a cable on the floor, which is fine. Of course, we have our framed cable like this. And I think we want to make sure that the bottom one here is the input, because of course that's how the blast furnace works. You can output from the bottom like you would with a regular hopper. And then here we're going to export like this to the front. And I don't think we can connect that here. You can't, unfortunately. I think you do have to connect to either the front or the back of the hopper. So we are going to have to place this somewhat awkwardly here, but then we can run that down and of course connect it to the cable that we're going to have in the ground. And so real quick, let me go ahead and craft up a bunch more of this framed inventory cable and see about getting all of this hooked up. All right, so once we've got this connected up all the way along here, again, it does look a little janky for now, but hopefully will look better in the future. What we should be able to do now is specify that we want to export fuel to our blast furnace. And I am going to tell it to export coal. We might end up changing that in the future. For example, we could look at auto-crafting our logs into planks and sending planks over. We could also look at setting up a little system to automatically smelt the logs into charcoal and then sending the charcoal over. But over here, if we right-click a piece of coal onto this guy, it should, whoops, that's not correct at all, actually. Shift-click to remove the filter. If we go ahead and right-click the coal onto this guy, it should start sending coal over into the fuel slot. Again, vanilla Minecraft furnace, you input fuel to the side, you input the smeltable item to the top, and you export to the bottom. And so now all of the raw iron is going to get smelted up, and then it's going to be imported using this basic inventory hopper around into the system. And so that's going to get put into any one of these chests over here. Cool. And so now back over here, all we're going to do is using a couple of bricks to get up here, we're going to have this hopper go down into here. And then next to that, we just need to have all of our other hoppers feed into that hopper. And so now, that's not correct at all, but now any and all of the blocks that are created, all of the gravelly blocks that are created should get funneled around eventually into that block placer, and then of course get placed down, broken, and smelted, and then finally imported into the system. I guess the very last thing that we actually need to do is hook this up, and then actually set all of these to export the specific pieces of ore. And also we need to run cable over to this side of the base so that we can import from that strainer right there. And then after that, we also of course need to look at actually automating the crafting and production of the gravelly mulch. So let's do something like this. And then let's go ahead and right click the iron ore piece here. Someone did ask if you can export and import multiple different things. The answer to that is yes. Let's make sure we put the recipe in. If you use one of the filters from the Tom's Simple Storage mod. So if you craft this item filter, which is not very expensive, 4 tin and a paper, you can then open that up. It has like a 3x3 grid, which you can fill with different items. And then you can right click that onto here and that will filter all of the items in that grid. It also has an allow list and a deny list mode. So you can specify if you want to export everything but one thing or export nothing but the thing listed, if that makes sense. Real quick, let's see. Can we make this? We definitely can. Let me get a couple of tin nuggets. Let's do this. So if you open this up, you'll see there's a bunch of items. We could, if we wanted to, go and grab, let's say, some copper pieces, and we could say that I want to use copper like this. By default, it is set to reject matching. You want to change it to allow matching. And now if I put this into one of our hoppers, let's say right about here, that is basically doing the same thing that this did, but instead it's filtering for copper, not iron. Of course, the benefit there is that you can, again, shift click to take that out, and you can add more items to that whitelist or that blank list if you so wish. But for us, this should be working. Of course, I do need to add another piece there to get that to fully work, but let me quickly go via my pipes ideally, because it's just a little bit faster, especially when the cooldown works. But let's take some of you, and some of you, and then back over here, not here, here, we should be able to set all of these up to export correctly. So let's do tin here, and then nickel here, like that. And now, just as a proof of concept, if we were to go ahead and put those into our system like this, that's going to put them into these chests. Now we should see all of those getting exported to their respective crafters, and those respective crafters should start crafting them, and then of course sending them around to be placed, broken, and worked with. Of course, Isaac, you fool, you do have to actually set the recipes before it is going to work. Let me go ahead and grab you, and you, because I have not set any of those recipes to actually work. The copper is missing just the one piece right here. Perfect. The tin is, of course, missing all of the pieces. Boom. And the nickel is also missing all the pieces. Boom. But that should now work, and it should start smelting stuff up. Again, this hopper here should act as a buffer, allowing us to hold it. For example, if we put down some nickel and some iron very quickly back to back, the hopper is going to allow us to hold all of those items whilst it waits for the blast furnace to kind of come up with space. And so this is pretty much the automation good to go here. Of course, in the future, we could also look at adding more blast furnaces to the setup if that becomes the bottleneck, if we're producing things too fast and we're not able to keep up with the smelting. But now, over on the other side of the base, all we should have to do, as soon as we eat some of these cooked fish fillets here, is we should place down one of our hoppers. Again, the inventory hopper, this guy right here, which we can almost make. We need our billionth wooden hopper of the episode. That is fine. Boom and boom. This time we're of course going to put this guy down onto here, the wooden strainer. And again, we want this to be an import, not an export. I will go ahead and put it down like this. We could put it down underneath In fact, no, you know what? I will put it down underneath. I think it's going to look a little bit nicer if we put it down on the bottom. I also will go ahead and upgrade to an iron pickaxe. We've got 70 iron here, so I feel like it's definitely worth upgrading. Along the same lines, we should probably also look at making one, if not a couple of iron shovels, and then using another hopper potentially with a chest to continually feed that block breaker with shovels to make sure that it's always got enough shovels to keep breaking all of the blocks, right? But back over here, if we go ahead and break this, I'll put it down like this. It does need to go down in such a way that the pipe is underneath, because if I just click it on there, it's going to set to export, not import. What I need to do is place down a cable first and then put the hopper onto the cable like that. So this is set to pull from the strainer, not export to the strainer. And then from there, we could do a quick /home to get us back up here. And we just need to connect that up again using even more of these framed inventory cable to our pre-existing framed inventory cable line, at which point we should start to see all of this stuff getting pulled around into the system. And then, of course, because we've already set it up, all of the ore pieces are going to be automatically sent around, crafted, and smelted using the setup that we just made. And of course, over here, we do again have to connect to the bottom like that. You can't connect to the side of the hopper, but placing that down should connect that up. And as you can see, all of this stuff is getting imported. It's not crazy fast, but neither is the strainer itself. The only reason we've got a ton of stuff in here is that I keep taking stacks of gravel and mulch and putting them in manually. Once we set up the automation, the strainer itself is not that fast. And so I do think that the importer here is going to import faster than the strainer can produce resources. And so in the long run, I think that will be fine. And so that is basically good to go. One thing the Twitch chat did point out, which I do think is potentially a good idea here, is that instead of crafting our mini coal into regular coal and then using the regular coal to smelt items, it might not be a terrible idea to just use mini coal instead, because the mini coal smelts exactly one item. And of course, it takes 8 mini coal to make 1 regular coal. And in a situation like this, where we're not guaranteed a constant stream of resources, right here there is a constant stream, but that's because we're working through a backlog. In general, we're not going to have that backlog, and so it's probably actually worth using the mini coal because it's just as efficient as the regular coal, but it means that as soon as we burn through a given item, it's not going to waste the rest of the coal. It's only going to use the exact amount of fuel that is needed because it smelts exactly 1 item at a time. And also, of course, we don't have to bother crafting it into regular coal, which would mean getting another crafter, getting more hoppers, exporting and importing, all of that stuff as well. And so this should work just fine. And so now, the next thing that we need to do, if we want to kind of finalize this automation, as it were, is we need to get that gravelly mulch made. Of course, the mulch itself is already being made, and if we wanted to, we could make more of these hopper botany pots to make it faster. The only thing that we're not making automatically right now is gravel. Thankfully, the making of gravel automatically should be fairly straightforward. In fact, we can turn cobblestone to gravel, and of course, we're making cobblestone automatically here. I did not think about the fact that the copper was going to oxidize. Does that affect the speed of my... It does affect the speed here. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to take these down. Can I craft the exposed copper back into copper ingots? I assume I can't. I can't. So let me take the copper and turn that back into copper ingots. We'll dump that in the system for now. We should definitely look, though, at getting some different block as our modifier block. We potentially picked the worst possible block because it's the only one that transforms and can no longer do its job. But what I was saying is that we should be able to take our cobblestone here and using our newest liquid, that being the eroding water, we can turn the cobblestone into gravel. It does take 200 ticks, which is 10 seconds. However, the gravel itself, or the gravelly mulch, I should say, I believe also takes about that long in the strainer. It does, it takes 10 seconds. And so we should be able to make the gravel at the exact same speed at which the strainer here uses that gravel for kind of perfect harmony. And so all we need to do is take the cobblestone from here, send it around into the strainer, have that turned into gravel, take the gravel from there, craft it with the mulch to make gravelly mulch, and then of course send that gravelly mulch round to the strainer. And all of that should be fairly doable if we can get a few more crafters and a few more of the inventory hoppers, aka the importers and exporters that we're going to use for a lot of our automation. All right, so over here we have 2 more hoppers, 1 set to export and 1 set to import. And so over here, what we should be able to do is the exact same stuff that we've been doing with our other crafters, just this time we're going to use gravel and we're going to use mulch. That's not where I want to put the gravel. I just want to have 1 for now. And then over here, we can of course take 1 mulch as well. And then back over here, we should be able to drop both of those into our crafter. And also, this is actually the perfect time for us to steal back that item filter, because here, what we're going to do is we're going to take copper and add that to the filter on its own, because that's all we want to filter there. We don't want to filter anything but copper. But then over here, we can remove copper from the filter and instead use this to export both gravel and mulch, like so. Nice. And so that should export all of that going forward. That's going to craft up the gravelly mulch, and then the importer there is, of course, going to import it. There are a few things you can do here. We could have the gravelly mulch go into the system and then export it over to the strainer. At the same time, though, you can also use the inventory cable connector, and I guess specifically the inventory cable connector filtered would allow us to automatically send the gravelly mulch straight from that crafter round into the strainer, because it would just go straight there. That might not be the best idea for us, though, simply due to the fact that there is a chance that the mesh breaks on the strainer, and then the gravelly mulch doesn't have anywhere to go because it's backed up in the strainer, although that actually might be good for us, because it might mean that we don't end up clogging our chests with gravelly mulch if the strainer stops working. And so you know what, let's give it a try. In order to make the storage crate here, we're just missing some planks. Thankfully, we have got a bunch of wood still to make that happen. Let's get another one of the storage crates. Let's get an inventory connector, and then I don't think we have 4 paper, but never mind, we totally do. Let's take this, and then over in here, we're going to go ahead and quickly eat some fish, and we're also going to go ahead and place down our inventory cable filtered like this. And this is going to be set specifically to the gravelly mulch. So if we take 1 gravel, 1 mulch, take the gravelly mulch, we can then head back over here, and we can put this in. This one by default is set to allow matching, but now what I think should happen is if we go back, for example, and I put the gravelly mulch in here, that gravelly mulch should, I think, just get sent directly round into here. And it did, because this is basically saying, this is where we put the gravelly mulch. We don't put it anywhere else. We don't put it into any of the other chests. It just goes in here. And so all of the gravelly mulch should go directly to here if there is space. What we need to do now is we need to export and import to this strainer. So let me go ahead, and I don't think I can break this block without breaking either the strainer or the framed cable, so I might have to break the framed cable a second here. But we're going to go ahead and, of course, use 2 more of these hoppers, because we need to, and actually I guess 3 more of these hoppers, because I need 1 over here that's going to import from the cobblestone, and then over here I need to both import and export to this as well. So I'll put down the import that's going to pull the cobblestone out. I'll put that down there. And of course, I'll put down, I could put this here. We could also put this on the back potentially as well. The only trouble with putting stuff in the back is that it might get deleted if we end up expanding out the room in the future with a key. So for now, we'll do something like this. I think that should be fine. Back over here, can I craft up like 2 or 3 more of these? I totally can. Perfect. And then we also do need a bit more cable. We are completely out of tin. And by completely out of tin, I mean we don't have enough tin to craft the recipe. How are we doing over here? Do we not have tin being made? Never mind, I guess we probably do have tin. We do, we've got loads of it. It is just not working because of the fact that we didn't set up the hopper to have more shovels, right? And so real quick, let me craft up like a couple of iron shovels. We don't need loads of these. They will last for quite a while. Let's make 5 shovels. And then I will go ahead and use another wooden hopper here. I'll also go ahead and use either a chest or a barrel or something to store all of those for the time being. In the future, we could maybe look at swapping this out for a storage door as well. That could potentially work. But for now, let's just do this. Let's do this, and let's just put all of those into there. That should hopefully keep this full up on iron shovels for the foreseeable future. At some point, we could also look at trying to auto-craft those shovels if we wanted to, and obviously have those kind of filled up in here constantly, and, you know, have a system in place that refills them when necessary. It would be nice if I could push the tin here to the front of the queue. If I do this and this, that's going to bring the tin in before it brings the copper in, which is perfect because the tin is indeed what I need to get even more inventory cables here. And those inventory cables are, of course, what I need to get this set up over here. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and put down an inventory cable here, and we're going to put down an inventory hopper. Although actually, an inventory hopper here I think is going to be a bad idea because the inventory hopper here will pull that cobblestone into our chest, which is of course not what we want. Over here, we do want to do exactly that. So we do want to have the cable here and then the hopper here, because that's going to pull everything from in here, which eventually is going to be gravel, and send it around into our system, which is then going to export it. Over here, what I think we actually want to do is I think we want to get a draw controller, and I think we want to hook these inventories, and potentially these ones as well, up to our simple storage network so that they're just already available, and then at that point we can just set this over here to export, and it's going to take any cobblestone we already have, export it, turn it into gravel, and then import it into the system. That's the idea anyway. Let me also go ahead and replace this guy down as well, right about there, to bring all of this online. We should start seeing this getting imported. It is indeed good stuff. The draw controller, again, much like the other storage drawers in the system, can only be made in its framed version. This guy right, oops, I tried to press A to bookmark it. This guy right here. This is made with a block of bronze along with 4 storage crates and 4 sticks. That should be fine. The storage crates are easy enough. And then as far as the bronze goes, we have 31 bronze nuggets, which is not enough for a block, but we do, of course, still have more tin and more copper, and so we should, in theory, be able to craft even more of this unfired bronze here, and of course, smelt those up over here to get even more bronze for our bronze block. Let's do that. Let's do this, and oh, this needs to be done in the blast furnace, of course. I completely forgot about that. That's fine. We can, again, go ahead and drop that in right about here. Boom. That's going to smelt up. Of course, it's going to be brought in automatically. We can add this over here for now. Again, there is a buffer here, but that buffer is only because we had such a large backlog of resources. Once we've burned through the buffer, I don't think we're going to need multiple blast furnaces. So for now, I think that's going to be fine. And once we have at least 9 bronze ingots, we can get our block, and that's everything for the framed draw controller. Just like our other drawers, I am going to color this in almost the exact same way. We're going to use our white concrete, this stuff right here, as the front, with the light blue on the back. And I think what I'm probably going to do over here is move these up by at least 1, but maybe a few blocks, because I think I want to have my draw controller right about here. By the way, these do retain their inventory when you break them, which is very handy. I think I'll put these quite a bit further up, because I do also want to get even more storage drawers, because I'd like to start storing stuff like iron, for example, and copper and tin. I'd like to start storing those in drawers as well, because currently we are making them automatically. They're getting put into our chests, but eventually we're going to start to fill these chests, and it's going to be very awkward, and I don't want to have to put down a never-ending number of chests. I'd rather put down more storage drawers, because for those who don't know, the storage drawers are upgradable. You can increase the capacity of the storage drawers dramatically. By default, they can hold 2,048 of a given item, but going forward, we can increase that up to the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of items per drawer, which is going to make them much, much more useful. So let me go ahead and do this. Let's also do this along with this, and of course, this. I'm still going to come back to get a new modifier block on top of that at some point in the not so distant future. But down here, we can, of course, go ahead and connect this up. So these drawers here do need to be connected to this frame draw controller. And then from there, we're going to just go ahead and use another one of these inventory connector cables to connect this framed draw controller to the rest of the system. And that's going to give the system access to everything in all of the storage drawers that are connected to that draw controller. Now, of course, right now, there are no drawers connected to that draw controller because there's nothing above it. But I'm going to go ahead and quickly craft up 8 storage drawers to fill this space here, and we'll get that all hooked up. Real quick, let's see if we can't get this down right about there. We can indeed. And then back over here, we do have a decision to make in terms of which drawers we make. And I'm kind of tempted to go with the 2x2 drawers here because it's going to allow us to store just a lot more items. The 2x2 drawers, they store the same total amount as the regular drawer, but they can store multiple different items. So essentially, where the standard storage drawer can hold 1 item and 2,048 of that item, this can hold 4 different items and it can hold 512 of each different item. And so if we do this, the good news as well is that we get 4 of them at a time, which makes it easier for us to fill this wall over here more quickly. We can then do this and this. That's now connected all of these up. And I think in theory, that should mean that if we go back over to here, we should now be able to see things like our blue brick in here. Of course, Isaac, to do that, you have to connect the cable up. And right now the cable is not connected up. And so let me instead see if we can't get some more of the inventory cable. We do have more tin now, and ideally some more of the framed inventory cable as well. Nice. Then, if we do a quick one of these, we can do something like this, and now if we go back, we should hopefully see that all of the stuff is in here. And it is. You'll see right away now we have the most cobblestone, we've got stone, we've got light blue colored stone, and if we were to, for example, take our lapis and our redstone and maybe our flint out of here, we could then go back over here and start filling these drawers with lapis, redstone, and flint. I don't know if there's like a priority system that we can use here. I don't think there is, but I have a feeling that if the lapis is in this drawer and that inventory connector is connected, I think it should try and put the lapis in here first. Let's give it a try. We've got 88 lapis there. If I take 3 out, we should be down to 85. Over here, we've got 149 lapis. In fact, let me take all of that lapis out. So now we should have just the remaining 85. If I put that all in here, do we now have 150 lapis in this drawer? We totally do, and so it is going to put it into the storage drawer before it tries to put it in a chest, but if the storage drawers do fill up, it will then overflow into the chest, which I think is perfect. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of whack all of these down. I don't know if it will try and put random items into the drawers. For example, if I just throw stuff like this into the system, is that going to fill my drawers with random junk? It is, which is unfortunate. The way to get around that is to make a drawer key, which is this guy right here. There is a quest for that. The drawer key is 1 key fragment, 2 bronze, and an upgrade template, which is any drawer surrounded by sticks. Let's go ahead and make some more of these 2x2 drawers here, just again because you get more of them than anything else. We are once again out of chests. Let's do something like this and 2 more of these. Fantastic. Let's get more of those 2x2 drawers, and then let's use one of those to make the upgrade templates, and let's use one of those to make some drawer keys. We are once again out of bronze, but of course that is still fine. We are still automatically getting the copper and the tin, and so we can go and do something like this, and once again temporarily stop using our blast furnace for smelting ingots and instead use it for bronze. And boom, there's our drawer key. Nice. The idea here, by the way, is that you can right-click onto a storage drawer and it will lock that storage drawer to the items that are already in it. And so if I were to go ahead and empty all of these out, you can lock an empty drawer like this. Basically now the system can't put things into the drawer, only I can put things into the drawer, because you'll see I can still put coal into here. And now if I take all of the coal out, that drawer is still locked to coal, despite the fact that there's no coal in there. Whereas if you don't lock the drawer and you take everything out, it will just be emptied. You can right click again to unlock the drawer if you want to. And yeah, that's going to allow us to specify what we want in these drawers, which is good. Over here, this is working. We do need a mesh in here, and that's kind of going to be a problem for us going forward. We're going to have to get better meshes or look at automating the production of meshes, but for the most part, that is not something for us to worry about just yet. Over here, this is still doing just fine, and hopefully we should start to see this kind of taking effect, because hopefully all of the cobblestone is going to get turned into gravel. That gravel should then get crafted into gravelly mulch, and then we should see that gravelly mulch get sent around over into here. So let me give it a second and see if we get any gravelly mulch. We haven't gotten any gravelly mulch, which makes me think that we have a problem somewhere along the line. Let me go and check the crafter, and I'm still getting used to the orientation of this base, but I think that there is gravel in there. Did this item filter work as expected? It's got to take gravel and mulch. So it should be sending both those around. Over here, is the gravel getting sent around? The gravel is not getting sent around. Chet is right in that I have not connected the mulch up to the system. That is a very good point. One thing I think I will do here is I think I will replace the chests beneath the botany pots with storage drawers. And so real quick here, if we get rid of this and we once again grab some more light blue colored stone and some more concrete, this drawer is going to be for the mulch because the mulch only produces 1 resource. However, for the trees, I think it's going to make sense for us to use these 2x2 drawers because the saplings do produce multiple different outputs. And so what we can actually do here is take 2 more of these framed drawers. And now over here, what we can do is we can replace these chests with 2x2 drawers. So let me get my axe and let me just go ahead and kind of break all of these. It's going to spew some items all over the place, but that's fine. So we're going to have a 2x2 drawer like this. We're going to lock that 2x2 drawer with our new drawer key like this. And then we're going to have 1 slot for logs, 1 slot for saplings, 1 slot for sticks. And I think that's everything. Going forward, it might not be a terrible idea to have 2 slots for logs. I think that the logs are the most produced resource. I think that's going to be fine. And then we can, of course, do the exact same thing here for the blue tree as well. Let's do this, along with this, and this. Of course, we'll go ahead and lock it. One other thing you can do, by the way, if you know you're going to lock your drawer, you can put the drawer key in your offhand, and then when you place the drawer down, it will go down automatically locked. And we can, of course, go ahead and do something like this. And now, if we can get one of our drawers and place it down right about here, that's going to connect all of these to the network. And so now our system should have access to the mulch, and it should, look at that, start crafting the gravelly mulch. Nice. So the Twitch chat has told me that apparently the crafter can only hold 2 items at a time, which is interesting because you can manually put in more than 2 items, but it looks like when you have it set to export like this, the crafter will never take more than 2 items. And so this, although we have more mulch, it's only going to send 1 mulch at a time, which is actually pretty good for us. I do notice that it's not sending more gravel over though, which is definitely somewhat concerning because I feel like it should be taking the gravel out of there, sending it around, turning it into gravelly mulch, and then sending it around over here. So there seems to be, I don't know if it's a visual glitch or a bug here, but if I take the gravel out, it crafts gravelly mulch. If I put it back in, it stops, and I take it out again, it works. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly break and replace this crafter. I don't know if we've encountered some kind of bug there, but hopefully a quick one of these might rectify it? No, that's still doing the exact same thing, eh? That's very odd, because it kind of seems like there's still some gravel in there, and I take it out. Let me try breaking and replacing the hopper and the crafter. Let's do this, and this. We'll turn that on, and then we'll put down the hopper again like so, and then we'll put the filter in. That exports the mulch. Okay, let me try one more thing real quick. The thing I'm going to try is just having 2 separate, like it could be a filter issue. I don't know why it would be a filter issue, but what I'm thinking is what instead if we just do something like this, where we have 1 for gravel, 1 for mulch, and then we put in 1 or 2 mulch and 1 or 2 gravel. Does that work? And if I quickly go and grab some more inventory cable, I don't think it's going to work. I think it's still going to cause the exact same issue, but let's just quickly see if something like that solves it. Yeah, that totally works. So I guess it's something to do with the filter on the pipe that it just doesn't like. It doesn't like using the pipe filter there because this works just fine. And so what I'll do then is I'll just move this to try and make it look just a little nicer. I'll put this here. This one is set to gravel. We'll set this one over here to mulch. And then we'll do just like a line right across the front, maybe. Like this and like that. And then I'll go ahead and kind of break some of these inventory pipes here to try and make it look maybe a little bit nicer. It does kind of look a little horrible still. We might look at tweaking that in the future to try and make it look nicer than it currently does. But this does seem to be working. And now over here on the other side of the base, we should see that we are automatically turning all of that gravelly mulch into all of the respective pieces. And of course, they're all being processed, which is perfect. And so now, after all of that, chat, I do believe that we have kind of fully automated that setup there. I say fully automated, there are still small kinks in the system. For example, we do still need to manually put the meshes in. It might not be a bad idea. We could make more bronze meshes, but it might not be a bad idea to use some iron meshes here because I think at this point in time, we've got way more iron than we do bronze and copper. And so we can go ahead and throw like an iron mesh in here once this breaks. We could also look at putting a hopper down on a different side of this strainer and again, kind of filling that up with multiple iron meshes so that we know it's going to have a mesh in for quite some time. And of course, it is still my goal at some point, hopefully in the not so distant future, to be able to get the improved everything upgrade, which is going to reduce the amount of durability lost each time the mesh is used. So the mesh should last longer. Real quick though, before we ramp up for today, I would like to quickly see if we can't make ourselves this paint kit, because that's going to allow us to paint all of these framed inventory cables and make things look just a little bit nicer. So to do this, we need sticks, we need buckets, we need wool. Bucket-wise, we already have 1 bucket. We can make a second bucket very easily, and of course, we can fill that with water from the unlimited ocean that we have available to us. Wool we can make from leafy string, boom. And the leafy string, by the way, just leaves. Very easy, you can shear some trees for that. And so we are missing blue dye, red dye, green dye, and black dye. So the blue dye is the easiest of them all. It's just lapis. The green dye is also super easy because we have access to cactus. The cactus, don't forget, you get by straining the sandy mulch, which we've kind of ignored up until now, but it is very important. We can use that like this. That's going to get us the green dye. The two slightly more tricky dyes are black dye and red dye. I think the black dye might be the easier of the two here because I'm fairly certain we actually already have ink sacs. We do. Again, these come in via the straining of the bait box, which we were using for fish earlier in the playthrough. And so the black dye also actually pretty straightforward. The final thing that we're missing is red dye. And red dye, I think, is going to be the trickiest of them all. I think we're going to have to try and get a poppy. And the way we're going to get a poppy is by bone mealing grass. Grass we do not have. However, there are grass seeds that we can get. They look like wheat seeds, but these are grass seeds that we can get by straining the dirty mulch. I don't believe that we have any. I also don't believe that we have any over in here either. We don't. But if we go ahead and get some more dirty mulch, which we can of course do with mulch and dirt, both of which we might have. I think we've got a little bit of dirt, and we can of course make more dirt using gravel if we like as well. So let's do this and this. And of course, I forgot that it's got the pull missing items from inventory, so it did pull all of the dirt out of my inventory. I was trying to save some to use with gravel to make more dirt, but I guess we're going to take the dirty mulch we have, and we're going to run that through, I think, any kind of strainer. So let me check here. It needs to be bone or copper. I think the copper is better than bone. It is, and then just above water. So let's put you in there. Let's quickly craft up a copper mesh, like so, and then let's go ahead and drop that in right about here to hopefully get some grass seeds. Never mind, chat is right. We do have beetroot seeds here. I didn't even think about beetroot seeds. The only awkward bit now is that we don't actually have any dirt to grow it on. That's actually not true. We have the light blue and pink dirt that I picked up earlier to make space for these cables. If we do this and we quickly grab our hoe, we should, I think, be able to do this. Never mind, it turns out you cannot hoe the light blue dirt. I guess that's fine. I guess in that case, we're just going to have to quickly go back down to the ocean floor, ideally with some kind of shovel. We could steal one from our pre-existing setup, but we might as well just go ahead, make a fresh one here. Let's head down, see if we can't find at least one more bit of dirt, and then we should hopefully be able to use that to get some beetroot, and of course we can then turn that beetroot directly into red dye. So let's take all of you, do a quick /home. Up here, this is coarse dirt. That's fine. We can do 2 of these. Drop down the beetroot seed. We, of course, still have a bunch of bone meal from all of our fish bones. And then if we do something like that, we can go ahead and harvest that beetroot and then hopefully just craft that beetroot into red dye. Perfect. Chat, that should be everything for the paint kit. And now using that paint kit, we should be able to cover up all of these cables. As I mentioned before, shift right click on the block that you want the paint kit to mimic, and then you just right click on all of the cables. Unfortunately, you can't ultimine it. You can't like hold down the ultimate key and then paint all of them at the same time, but thankfully we don't have that many cables, and so this should be fine. And it's just going to make it look a whole lot tidier, despite the fact that we do still have all of those cables in the ground. I do wonder, real quick, in some of the mods, when you hold one of the cables, it shows you them in the ground. That's not the case here, so it's going to be a little awkward. We're going to have to look in the top left to see where an inventory cable is if we're looking to find one in the future, but I think that's a worthwhile trade-off because it just looks so much nicer, and we don't have to have cables traipsing all around the base. Nice. And so, next time, chat, we will come back. It looks like we are a little low on tiny coal. We might still be in a situation where it's potentially worth us using the wood from our botany pots as opposed to using the tiny coal. Again, either for planks or for charcoal, either of those could be useful. And I also do think, real quick, it's probably worth getting storage drawers for things like gravelly mulch as well. Right now, that gravelly mulch is just going to start filling up our inventories here. I think it's probably going to be in our best interest for us to get another big drawer for it. We could put it in one of these drawers, but you'll see that already we're almost at 512 gravelly mulch. It's going up quite quickly here. Let me see. Can I get another drawer? That's only because we've got so much gravel in the system, by the way. Once we burn through the, few hundred gravel that we already have, the production of that gravelly mulch is going to slow down substantially, and it's basically going to be produced about as fast as it's being used, which is kind of the whole idea, but what I'm thinking is over here, if we do this and this, we can use this as our draw for gravelly mulch going forward, and it just means that we're not going to end up with a ton of gravelly mulch kind of clogging up our system. Cool, so we'll take all that out, and we'll drop all of that in over here. Cool. And we'll probably put some more big drawers down here as well to try and make it look just a little bit nicer, and maybe some more botany pots over on this side again as well to try and make it look more symmetrical. But yeah, that is that automation taken care of. So now we don't have to manually make all of our iron, all of our copper, all of our tin, all of our nickel, or even all of our lapis coal and whatnot. There are still little bits of automation to do. For example, we don't have redstone coming in. That we need to do with dust blocks, which we need to do with sand. The sand we can get from gravel. Interesting. So we might want to take some of the gravel, strain it again into sand, and then strain that into dust. That's going to require a few more eroding blocks of water. And then, of course, we can do the exact same thing here where we take the dust block. That gets us silver and gold, as well as potentially lead. And so we could also look at adding those to our wall over here as well to allow us to make this a bit more symmetrical, because right now it's still uneven. But if we added silver, gold, and lead, that would make it perfectly symmetrical. Of course, at that point, we might need to look at adding more blast furnaces, but that should all be fairly doable. And then, of course, we can begin to look over at progressing forward with the next section of the quest book. But I do think it's very much so worth getting the automation done early on so we're not struggling later on in the pack. But unfortunately, that is all we have time for this episode of Submerged.